What if I told you that thousands of years ago, long before dating apps, pride parades, or even the word gay, queerness was celebrated, respected, and even institutionalized? Welcome to the secret gay history of ancient civilizations, queer journey through time that your high school history class definitely skipped. I'm here to guide you through centuries of gender fluidity, same-sex unions, and glorious queer expression. This video discusses some historical practices for educational purposes. We'll explore how they functioned in ancient times, how it was viewed, and why modern historians continue to debate it. This is a historical analysis, not an endorsement. Before we get started, please make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're releasing new episodes every week. Also, grab a pen and paper to jot down which ancient civilization you'd like to visit next. And for all my history nerds out there, stick around until the end for a special message. So where should we start first? How about ancient Greece, where being gay wasn't just normal, it was practically expected? Yeah, ancient Greece, the birthplace of democracy, Western philosophy, and pederasty. What's that? Well, in ancient Greece, especially in Athens, pederasty referred to a socially acknowledged relationship between an adult man and an adolescent boy, in fact. Pederasty was considered a mentorship system that could include education, military training, and social bonding. Now, I know what you're thinking. Ooh. But to ancient Greeks, this was completely normal. These relationships were structured and ritualized, not casual flings. Framed as part of the boy's moral and civic education and meant to be temporary. Ending when the boy reached adulthood, ancient Greek society was complex, and some of its norms, like the practice of pederasty, are deeply uncomfortable today. In fact, same-sex relations between men was common throughout Greece, regardless of age. Now, while we might find some of these practices weird or freaky by today's standards, what's important is how the ancient Greeks viewed same-sex relationships. You see, male-male relationships were part of everyday life. But what was love like in ancient Greece? Well, the philosopher Plato wrote that love between men was the highest form of love. And his book Symposium is basically a grinder profile written in poetic Greek. Plato was all about this uranic love, transcendent love between men that elevated them to the heavens. He imagined same-sex love as an escape from the physical world and a gateway to knowledge and wisdom. Don't hate Plato. Plato's student Aristotle was also crazy about a handsome young man. Some classical writers hint at Aristotle's affection for a young man named Nicomachus, describing him as handsome and suggesting a personal, possibly romantic connection. And then there's the most famous homosexual love affair in all of ancient Greece, Achilles and Patroclus. Their story is a tale of friendship and sexual desire that moved even the ancient Greeks. Achilles was the greatest warrior of the Trojan War, and Patroclus was his best friend and advisor. When Patroclus died, Achilles was overcome with grief and rage, showing that same-sex relationships could be deep and meaningful. So even though we cringe at the idea of pederasty today, it seems like the Greeks did have a spectrum of sexuality and love. And Sparta, oh honey, that entire warrior society encouraged same-sex bonds to build loyalty among soldiers. Nothing says brotherhood like matching spears and boyfriends. Now, let's head to ancient Rome, where things got even wilder. Roman masculinity was more about dominance than gender. Same-sex activity between men was everywhere. Emperors like Nero and Hadrian had male lovers. Hadrian was so obsessed with his boyfriend Antinous, he made him a god after he died. A literal twink deity, iconic. However, there were some social rules regarding same-sex activities in Rome. Sure, being the active partner was more acceptable, but queerness wasn't erased. It was woven into the empire's daily life, religion, and politics. But hold up, because Rome wasn't the only place where queerness was happening. Ancient Egypt was a little more complicated, but here's what we know. Records about queerness were pretty uncommon, but there are some tales that give us hints about same-sex relationships. One of the most famous examples is the tale of Neonk-Nun and Kumhotep. These two men were royal manicurists, who lived around 2000 BC and were buried together in a tomb near Cairo. Now, historians debate whether they were lovers or brothers, but the decoration of their tomb suggests a close relationship. For example, one wall carving shows them holding hands, and there are a few cheeky details here and there, shall we say. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, the hieroglyphs. Some of the hieroglyphs found on the walls of the tomb have been interpreted as having gay undertones. One particular symbol, a pair of cross sticks, has been suggested to represent male genitalia. There's also a scene depicting the two men performing a ritual related to fertility and procreation. While interpretations vary, these symbols point to the possibility of same-sex desire and queer experiences in ancient Egypt, but beyond ancient Greece, Rome, and Egypt. Queerness was alive and well around the globe before colonialism swept across the world and wiped out tons of cultures. Many societies had their own unique ways of expressing gender and sexuality. For example, in India, same-sex desire was referenced in ancient texts like the Kama Sutra, which explored various forms of love and relationships, including those between people of the same gender. In sub-Saharan Africa, there are records of women in certain tribes marrying other women. In the Americas, many indigenous nations recognize two-spirit people, individuals who identified as having both masculine and feminine spirits. Before Western colonization, many cultures had fluid understandings of gender and sexuality, often spiritual, not taboo. These individuals often played important roles in their communities and were respected for their unique perspectives and contributions. So you're probably wondering what happened. Why aren't we celebrating diversity and love instead of banning it? Well, the answer is simple, but complex, harmful, ugly, and wrong. Enter colonialism and its army of homophobia. When European powers colonized vast parts of the world, in the 15th to 20th centuries, they brought with them a wave of religious fervor and rigid social norms. Homosexuality, which was once seen as a natural part of human relationships in many cultures, was suddenly labeled as a sin, a crime, and a sickness. Missionaries and colonial leaders imposed their own cultural and religious beliefs onto local populations, often criminalizing anything that deviated from their own norms. For example, Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which criminalizes consensual same-sex relationships between adults, was inherited from the British Empire. During the colonial era, the British sought to control and regulate the sexual behavior of the people they ruled over. Same-sex relationships were seen as a threat to the social order and were subject to punishment. Similarly, the British buggery laws in Africa criminalized sexual acts deemed unnatural, contributing to the suppression of queer identities and relationships. Oh, and let's not forget about the forced medicalization of homosexuality. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, queerness was increasingly seen as a mental illness, a disease that needed to be cured. This led to horrific practices like conversion therapy, which aimed to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity through psychological manipulation and abuse. So to put it simply, queerness didn't disappear. It was actively erased and suppressed by those in power. We've traveled through time and visited corners of the world where love was celebrated, practiced and woven into the fabric of society. We've seen how homosexuality wasn't just tolerated, it was cherished. And we've witnessed the heartbreaking suppression of queer identities and relationships during the era of colonialism. But remember, this is just the beginning of our queer journey. Queer history didn't start in the 1960s. It's ancient, it's global, and it's powerful. Knowing our past reminds us. We've always been here. In temples, in poems, in love stories carved in stone. So next time someone says being gay is unnatural or modern, hit them with a little history and a little sass. In the next episodes, we'll explore the lives of real historical figures who dared to live their truth, despite societal pressures. If you liked this dive into queer history, hit subscribe. We've got so much more coming. From drag queens in the 1800s to love letters from queer soldiers, we're telling the stories they tried to erase. Join us as we uncover their stories and learn how they paved the way for future generations. Till then, keep exploring the world. Keep questioning the status quo and keep celebrating the diversity of human experience. Together we can continue to rewrite history and create a future where everyone can love fearlessly. As we reflect on these stories, let's remember something timeless. Love is only love when it's grounded in respect, empathy, and consent. In any relationship, whether romantic, sexual, or platonic, a no should always be honored. Everyone deserves to feel safe, seen, and respected. Then and now, this has been the secret gay history of ancient civilizations. We are atrospectiva, and remember, history is queerer than you think. And for my history nerds, here's your special message. Mary Daly, an American historian and activist, wrote extensively about the oppression of women and the LGBTQ community. Her work challenged traditional historical narratives that often erased or distorted the experiences of marginalized groups. In her book, Beyond God the Father, Toward a History of the Goddess, Daly explores the historical roots of patriarchal religion and the subjugation of women. She argues that the rise of monotheistic religions and the figure of God as a male deity contributed to the devaluation of female perspectives and the establishment of male dominance. Daly's work had a profound impact on feminist theory and the study of gender and sexuality in history. So, yeah, Google her if you want to. Thanks for watching. Till next time.